What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined every day by my main man, Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/ All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they are 1-0. They lead the AFC North. It is a victory Monday, and well, you don't have to score touchdowns to win football games, and that's what we learned yesterday. Shout out to Chris Boswell and a leg that just keeps on giving even when the punter goes down. We're going to dive into three massive stars in this game. Did George Pickens quiet all of the wide receiver noise? And the biggest question, the question everybody's got this morning, the question everybody wants to know. We head into week 2, the Denver Broncos, a revenge game for Russell Wilson. But is it going to be Russell Wilson, or is Justin Fields the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers moving forward? We'll dive into all that, plus all of your questions as we do every single day. It's a good one here in the Berg. I probably have 75 people working in my backyard right now, but you know what they say. Got 35 people, tomorrow's going to be a good day. So how are we feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling fantastic. It's the first Monday of the NFL season, which for me means I get my Monday routine back, wake up, do a little bit of work, watch NFL primetime, catch up on what happened around the league, and just enjoy the fact that football is back and it will not be taken from us until February. It is a glorious Monday morning.
It really is. I said that yesterday. I said, somebody asked me, they said, what are you doing on, or I said that Saturday. It was one of Jillian's family members. It was like, what are you doing on Sunday? And I said, every Sunday for the next 18 Sundays, I am not available, actually. So that's a great, you don't realize how many Sundays that is, but that's a lot. And it's a beautiful, beautiful time. We are one down. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 1-0, 18-10 in a victory that, look at, you walk out of there, a win's a win, especially in week 1. The NFL is as fickle as it comes the first couple of weeks of the season. And even if you look at it and say the offense wasn't great and there were questions and maybe you weren't the biggest fan of Justin Fields and Arthur Smith might not have been the superstar offensive coordinator right off the bat that we thought he was going to be or hoped that he was going to be, there were a few moments yesterday where you thought the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to walk out of here with a loss. There were a few moments yesterday where you thought the Pittsburgh Steelers weren't going to do enough to win this game. And while you could say that a lot over the past couple of years, it was different yesterday. And even if it wasn't perfect, and it's far from perfect, and even if the offense didn't do what the offense was supposed to do, and there are still a ton of questions, it was a different feeling, a different Pittsburgh Steelers yesterday. And both sides of the ball, I mean, I think there were moments where it felt kind of good. 18-10. Shout out to Chris Boswell. Cameron Johnston, I got some rough news last night. I tried to dive into that injury and see what was happening. It's not looking good for him. I'd be shocked if he becomes or if he returns at all this season, but most likely is going to end up on IR relatively soon and shut him down for 4 weeks minimum, but potentially the rest of the season. That's a rough one for a dude who, I mean, it's crazy to think that we were this juiced up about a punter, but he did that to us and we get one punt out of him. And it wasn't, it was just a rough ending for Cameron Johnston and potentially his season in 2024. Let's dive into the defense first. We're going to go defense, George Pickens, obviously in the wide receiver room. And then we will obviously address the biggest question everybody has, Justin Fields and Arthur Smith. But we'll start with TJ Watt. I don't know if you remember this. I think it was Thursday, maybe it was Friday. Somebody asked me, hey, who's getting the sacks in this one? What's your bold predictions on these sacks? How many sacks you getting? I said TJ is going to have 2 of them. Cam Hayward's going to have 1 of them. TJ finished with 2, should have been like 6. And Cam Hayward finishes with the half of 1. TJ Watts included a walk-off sack to end this game. Right from the jump, okay? Something became very clear. The Pittsburgh Steelers do not need a 4th edge rusher because Nick Herbig is very okay being the 3rd, and he could take away all of that pressure, and there's no need for it. And 2, man, I wish I had more money in my DraftKings account on Saturday night because I had the bet in place. I had it, or Thursday. This was Thursday. I don't know what time. The game got postponed to 8:40. I think this was like 8:35. I said, I'm putting money, TJ Watt, Defensive Player of the Year, and it expired right before I did it, and I was not able to do it. But if I was a betting man, it's going to be hard to deny TJ Watt this season. TJ is an absolute monster, but there's two other names that I want to talk about. I think two other names that deserve some recognition here. I've been rambling. I've been going off and off and off about how two things. One, the Deontay Johnson trade is okay in the Pittsburgh Steelers' favor. Why? Because Dante Jackson's a dude. Because Dante Jackson's going to be totally fine. And even if a wide receiver for a cornerback is not a one-for-one trade that happens in the NFL and is never going to be viewed as a one-for-one trade where the team getting the cornerback is the winner, the Steelers won this trade simply because Dante Jackson is a dude, and he showed right from the jump that he is a dude. The other one is the guy I've been talking about for months here. Months. I was so fired up yesterday at Deshaun Elliott's performance that I almost made a t-shirt, that I almost spent halftime making a t-shirt of Deshaun Elliott. And then I said, nobody wants a t-shirt of Deshaun Elliott, but I'm going to tell him today when I get in the locker room, Deshaun Elliott is a monster. He is the best safety along Minkah Fitzpatrick that the Pittsburgh Steelers have had since Minkah has arrived, and what he is going to do for that safety room and for that secondary as a whole. Where the Pittsburgh Steelers secondary currently sits is better than it has been my entire time covering this team. That includes the Joe Hayden, Steven Nelson, Mike Hilton years, and anything that came before then, which wasn't very impressive, but probably all the way up until the Troy Polamalu, Ryan Clark, Ike Taylor years. That's how good this secondary is for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if they could stay healthy, they just got dudes on dudes on dudes. I know you were watching. I know you were fired up about Deshaun Elliott. What were your thoughts on Deshaun, Dante, and obviously TJ Watt?
Really, the entire secondary, because you can throw in Joey Porter Jr. in there because they just didn't go towards him. They didn't. I mean, he didn't have any outstanding plays because they avoided him at all costs. And that is a huge thing for the Steelers because that cuts the field in half. And whenever he's out there, he's typically covering their best receiver. Drake London did not have a great day. Really, the entire Atlanta offense didn't have a great day because the Steelers defense was great. But a large part of it was, I mean, the Steelers pass rush, which is obviously all world, and we expected that. Yeah. But the Steelers secondary was very, very impressive. Joey Porter Jr., like I mentioned, was just not targeted. Dante Jackson held up, though. And I think that is the biggest thing that everybody wanted to know is, hey, it's going to be heavy dosage of everybody's going after Dante. I thought he held up really well. And, you know, Deshaun Elliott, what more can you say about his performance yesterday? Take away the picks from those two guys, too, and they still had very, very solid performances.
Dude, they were electric. They were their instincts were so fluid. Like you saw how much of a vet, like they know how to play NFL football. They've been here before. That's what you saw. This was not mistakes. This is not late to the football. These are guys that understand where a play is going and how to get there and when they need to get there. And that is huge because the Pittsburgh Steelers have lacked that in every way. On top of that, they showed up with speed. They showed up with physicality. There were no holes in either of their games. And just like you said, Drake London was quiet in this game, and that was because Kirk Cousins couldn't target him because Joey Porter Jr. did what Joey Porter Jr. needed to do. And if that's what the Steelers season looks like, is that teams cannot throw to their best wide receiver because Joey Porter Jr. is over there, and Dante Jackson and Deshaun Elliott and Minkah Fitzpatrick are able to do everything that they're able to do, the Pittsburgh Steelers secondary is in a great spot. And that only sets up TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and the rest of them for an even better season. I'll also talk, I think a lot of people are down on Patrick Queen. I saw a story today from somebody saying the Steelers instantly regret signing Patrick Queen. He did nothing in week 1. And I was like, dude, I think he did fine. The running game was at times, but it was in no ways upsetting because there were moments of, okay, they're running the football well. And those moments got shut down rather quickly, actually. And yeah, they came back. But when you have Tyler Aguilar and Bijan Robinson, chances are you're going to have some runs. Chances are you're going to be able to do some things. The Falcons were able to do some things, but they weren't able to do enough. Peyton Wilson comes in here, saves a potential game-saving touchdown as a rookie, which I thought was massive. Landon Roberts is Landon Roberts, and I thought Patrick Queen had closing speed that was fine and was in there and was instinctive. And you didn't, if you go back and watch the tape, which I always watch it. Last night was late, so I was a little bit tired, but I always watch it a second time before Monday morning. I try to very hard. And what you see from Patrick Queen is a guy who is always around the ball. And even if you're not coming up with tackles, you're always around the ball. And that's what the Steelers needed in an inside linebacker. And I think that's what they got in Patrick Queen is you might have got 3 yards, but you weren't getting 4 because Patrick Queen was going to be right there. And that's what you're looking for in that. I by no means was upset with Patrick Queen's play in week 1.
Yeah, whenever I watched yesterday and parcel it out, after the first series, I was a little concerned because the run defense was not good, but then they settled in.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to pick apart anything on the Steelers defense, you're really nitpicking because after that first drive where they went down and they had to have that touchdown saving tackle by Peyton Wilson, who I thought was pretty impressive, especially for a 4th-round rookie, 3rd-round rookie, whatever he was. I thought it was very, after that, it was very good. And I think that if you're trying to nitpick about, well, Patrick Queen didn't make a huge impact. I mean, the team gave up 56 total yards in the second half and gave up 10 total points, 7 of which were basically handed to him because TJ Watt had a strip sack fumble the play before it. So I think if you're trying to talk bad about the Steelers defense this morning, you're just nitpicking. And it's really an overreaction to say anything too poor about a defense that was that dominant on Sunday afternoon.
I agree 100%. Like you don't need everybody to be perfect. If everybody went out here and they were balling in week 1, I would imagine by week 7, week 8, they weren't as good as you'd want them to be because they die off. That's what you want. Week 1 is about getting the rust off. These guys haven't played. TJ said it himself. It kind of felt like the first couple of series you were getting the rust off because they haven't played in so long. They didn't play during the preseason. And I get Patrick Queen did a little bit, but very little in the preseason, very little in training camp by the end of it because he was dealing with an injury. I'm impressed by where this defense as in a whole, and I have no issues with Patrick Queen's play, at least not yet. The other side of the football is George Pickens, and we are going to talk Justin Fields, obviously. We're going to talk Arthur Smith, but we're leading up to Arthur Smith and Justin Fields because that is the topic of conversation that we have to have, and that's going to be the biggest topic of conversation that we have on this show today. But George Pickens, man, I got to ask you the question. And I have thoughts. I have lots of thoughts, but that's why I want to get yours and hear yours. Did he do enough yesterday to say, yeah, the Pittsburgh Steelers have a stud and maybe they don't need anybody else in that receiving room?
He did enough to prove to everybody who said that he was going to be a non-factor that they were wrong, right? Because everybody said, well, because the Steelers don't have anybody else, George Pickens is going to be taken out of the game.
Yes.
They had AJ Terrell on George Pickens for most of yesterday. He was not taken out of the game by any means. He made the biggest plays for the Steelers offense in the biggest moments for the Steelers offense. They dialed it up. They got what they wanted, and it ended up working out in their favor. He can do that. Now, as far as what's behind him, yeah, it's a little concerning. They combined for 2 receptions for 8 yards. Receivers not named George Pickens. But what you did see is a lot of tight end usage. What you did see is a lot of opportunities to try to get running backs the ball out in space. But what you saw more of is exactly what we expected. This is a run-first offense. They're going to run it down your throat, 3-4 yards a clip, and just try to move the sticks as much as they can to keep the possession in their hands and to run the clock out so their defense doesn't have to be on the field as much. They did that to perfection yesterday. So while that is a good sign, and we'll talk more about Arthur Smith later, as far as the wide receivers are concerned, yeah, you'd hope to get a little bit more talent in that room, and I'm sure Omar Khan is well aware of that, and you'd hope to get a little bit more production out of receivers not named George Pickens when it comes to 2 receptions for 8 yards. You're going to need more of that in the future against teams that are going to be a little bit more difficult to go up against.
Yeah, I agree. Look at George Pickens quieted all my concerns yesterday when it comes to George Pickens, because there were the thoughts, like you said, of is George Pickens going to get shut down? Is this going to be okay, you could double team George, and you will find double teams with George that he is unable to beat. Those will happen. But there are teams throughout time that have one really good wide receiver and nobody behind them, and they make that work quite well. And there are a lot of teams in the NFL today that fall into that same tax bracket there. And I think George Pickens, we knew George Pickens was a star. I would be stunned if George Pickens is not a top 10 wide receiver, maybe higher by the end of the season, because what I saw yesterday was unbelievable. Like body control that does not exist. That should not, he is an alien, and he's been an alien, and just reminded us in, I think it was his first catch of the game, second catch of the game, was just, yeah, I could do that, and that's fine. That's no big deal. He gets open. His route running is so much better than it's been the last 2 seasons, which is so key to the Steelers, and his ability to locate the football is second to none. And if the Pittsburgh Steelers could get an offense that finds him open more times than not, I think that your receiving game will be just fine. He is a stud. He's a superstar. I can't say it enough. Like I said it 2 years ago, the first day OTA practice, 3 years ago, the first day OTA practice, and people freaked out on me. And I will continue to bring that up because it is so unbelievably undeniable that George Pickens is going to be a monster in the NFL for years to come. And he's just getting started. When it comes to the rest of them, yeah. I was a guy who I was feeling confident in the Van Jefferson over 11.5 receiving yards. There's just no way that wasn't going to happen. Pat Freiermuth had like 28 yards or something like that, and I thought he was utilized well for the situation that he was in. And don't get me wrong, you have to also acknowledge that Justin Fields missed Van Jefferson wide open in one play and missed somebody else open almost 3 or 4 plays later. And that plays a role. But overall, you do need somebody. I will say that the Steelers don't need a Brandon Ayuk. They're fine without a Brandon Ayuk, but they could use John Mechie. They can use a Cortland Sutton. They could use, I don't want to say Treylon Burks. He played terrible yesterday, but they could use those guys. They could use a number 2 who's probably better than Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin. And maybe that number 2 is Roman Wilson. Maybe that guy could be Roman Wilson, and we have to wait and find that out. But the Steelers have to find that guy, and I think that's the top of their priority list right now is, okay, who is that guy? Is it going to be Roman? Can we get Roman back in week 2? If they could get Roman back in week 2, I feel confident about the situation. If they can't, maybe you start looking on the outside because I just don't think that Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin are enough, and I'm a big Calvin guy, and I think that if the offense slowed down, maybe you could figure it out. But you got to put your money where your mouth is. And yesterday he did not do that. Neither did Van Jefferson. It's a concern. Again, I don't think you need a massive wide receiver, but I do think you need something on the other side of George Pickens before you're comfortable with where the Pittsburgh Steelers are. With that said, we're going to talk Arthur Smith, Justin Fields, and as we do every single day, we will make sure to answer all of your questions. But first, we got a word from our boys over at DraftKings. What's up, guys? It's football season, and we've teamed up with DraftKings. Right now, new customers who bet $5 will receive $250 in bonus bets instantly. Plus, you'll receive 1 month of NFL Plus Premium. It's hard to think of a better way to celebrate fall weather, your favorite jersey, and Sunday touchdowns than with the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Download the DraftKings app and use our promo code ALLSteelers. That's $250 in bonus bets instantly and 1 month of NFL Plus Premium after betting just $5. Stay in the action and use your $250 in bonus bets to bet anytime touchdowns on DraftKings. DraftKings is the place to bet touchdowns. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You could still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use my promo code ALLSteelers and bet just $5 on any wager and get $250 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code ALLSteelers only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Shout out our boys over at DraftKings. All right, the big question, the massive question, the question everybody's got on their minds, the question that I spent a long time. You're in the Slack chat. You're in the group chat we got going on, and we yesterday, we're divvying up stories for the team, and hey, who's grabbing this? Here's the columns, here's the opinion pieces, and I get stuck with the Justin Fields one. And I wanted the Justin Fields one. Yeah, I wanted the Justin Fields one. That's the story I wanted to have my hands on. But I ate dinner over it. I went for a walk over it. I spoke to the wife about it. I said, dude, I just can't decide the direction that I need to go in with this story. And as crazy as it sounds, because the Steelers scored 18 points with Chris Boswell and no offensive help, the Steelers by no means at any point looked like an offense that was going to go win a Super Bowl. But you looked at it and you said, there's something about these guys that I kind of want to stick with. There's something about Justin Fields and company that I want to give an opportunity to. So we'll start with Arthur Smith. We'll finish with Justin Fields. Arthur Smith's offense yesterday was And I don't think you could go better than because there were moments of cool. Yeah, that was fine. This is playing well. You got to utilize what you have. And then there were moments of, Why is Cordero Patterson running the football on third down? What are we doing? And that's nothing against Cordero Patterson. I think you should utilize Cordero Patterson. What I don't think you should do is hand the football to your third string running back in a moment when you have both Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren in front of him. And I'm sorry, but Najee has proven time and time and time again that he will get 6 yards if he gets hit on the 2-yard line. If he needs 6 yards, he gets hit after 2. He's got a shot at that 6. Nobody else in that backfield, I'm putting that on. Nobody else. Najee could catch the football. He could run routes. Why is he not out there on third down? Why are we doing this? And what happened to Jaylen Warren? Why is Jaylen Warren not on the football field at all? Is he done? Are we done with Jaylen Warren? That's my biggest question. Arthur Smith to me was in. Should have been more move in the pocket, which I got to give props to the offensive line. I thought they blocked very well yesterday. I thought they were totally fine for the mishaps that they had in the preseason and then the injuries that they dealt with just before week 1 and the quarterback change. I'm not putting any of the snaps on Zach Frazier. I'm sorry, but 2 centers, 1 quarterback, it's the quarterback. This is a Justin Fields issue. Figure it out. And I just don't know if the wide receivers could have been involved more. But I thought Pat Freiermuth was involved enough. Could have been more, but I thought enough. I thought the sideline was used well, and also the middle of the field with some George Pickens route. I thought that they should have went deep a little bit more than they did, but at the same time, you connect with George Pickens on that deep ball, and there's no pass interference, which wasn't pass interference. We're not having that conversation. And on top of that, I just think that Justin was a little bit rattled and things were a little bit sloppy, and that played a role. The fact that you had to make a quarterback change 2 days before, that you probably had to totally reshape your offense and the way it looks, and I don't care who you are, every coach will say the same thing. Oh, well, our backup quarterback is essentially our starting quarterback, and they do the same things very well. No, they don't. They never do. That's not the case, but I get that that's what you have to say. The way I look at it is Arthur Smith's offense in my head was 50-50 and not terrible, but not great. Some mishaps, but at the same time, I think the offense flowed much better than it has in 2.5 seasons. And because of that, I'll say there's room to build on and there's optimism to grow from. And I feel okay about where they're headed, not where they are, but where they are headed. And there's some light at the end of this tunnel, whereas there was no light. In fact, I don't even think there was a tunnel anymore when it was Matt Canada, Kenny Pickett and company the last 3 years.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack about yesterday's performance, but what I think it boils down to is, as far as a base to build off of, you're perfectly fine with what you saw from Arthur Smith as a play caller yesterday. There were a couple of things where you said, all right, obviously the center quarterback exchange, Fields is much better out of shotgun. That's something that they didn't make that adjustment early because Russell Wilson is an under center quarterback, and that's what they wanted to do with Wilson. So they thought they could plug and play. They had to adapt, and they did throughout the game. That much I like about Arthur Smith.
Yes.
The play calling is questionable. I'm not going to go as far as to say the Cordero Patterson touches, because I understand it's probably because Jaylen Warren was on a snap count. When Warren was in there, he looked fine. But some of those touches you have to understand are going to go to Jaylen Warren when he's more healthy.
Yes.
The things that are questionable to me, running the end around, not in its entirety, but running it to George Pickens instead of a guy like Calvin Austin.
Could we also highlight the Van Jefferson screen with Calvin Austin in front of him? What are we doing?
Austin blocked. Yeah, exactly. So especially when you only need 2 or 3 yards, you want to give it to the guy that's the fastest, that's going to be able to make people miss, maybe one person miss in the open field, and hope that those guys block. Both blocks were bad. Van Jefferson can't evade it. And that's what made it bad. So a couple of those things are questionable, but I think overall, when you look at the game from Arthur Smith in a play calling standpoint, he did fine. He did better than we've seen for 3 years. And I think Mark Caboli said it in his article yesterday, better than you saw the 3 years before that with Randy Fichtner. So it's a really good base to build off of. And I think that's where the Steelers are at right now with their offensive coordinator.
I agree. I by no means was impressed yesterday, but it was the first time, and we're going to talk about the quarterback situation too. It was the first time in so long that you just said, there's so much room for growth here, and you feel as if the growth is going to come. Whereas in years past, there was you got to think the Steelers, they almost like 3-and-outs were almost not a thing. Like they felt okay. If it wasn't for penalties and mishaps and bad plays, they'd probably roll. They'd probably, Chris Boswell could have had 2-3 more field goals by the end of that game. Who knows? I just think that you saw, just like you said, you saw the adjustments, you saw the game plan change, you saw that they went in at halftime or went in at the end of the first quarter and said, okay, this is what we need to do to be better. And that's what you're looking for from Arthur Smith. And there is so much room to grow. This is week 1. You got to walk off the rust or run off the rust and go from there. But I'm not disappointed in Arthur Smith at all. When it comes to Justin Fields, the big question, the massive question, what happens in week 2? Russell Wilson revenge game. Arthur Smith gets his. Is Russ next? Do the Steelers turn to him? Do the Steelers draw out this injury much longer than they need to because Russ isn't healthy. Russ isn't healthy yet. We're not going to play him. We're not going to push the limits. This is Justin for right now, just to see if they could get another week out of him, see if they improve, and then they go from there. Do they name Justin the starter, or is Russ coming back? That is the massive question. I got thoughts. I'll ask you first. Do you think Justin got a shot at week 2 yesterday?
I think that he put himself in a position where if Russell Wilson isn't 100%, you go back to Justin Fields.
Yes.
Because there's no need to throw out a slightly injured or, even more than slightly injured. We don't know the severity of it, but there's no reason to throw out there an injured Russell Wilson when Justin Fields showed you that he can do whatever it takes to win this game. He doesn't need to go out there and be a superstar. He doesn't need to go out there and be, I saw a lot of people talking about Anthony Richardson. He doesn't have to be Anthony Richardson. He just has to be what he was yesterday. Yeah, cleaned a couple of things up, understandably, especially those early drives. You could tell the jitters were there. He needed to settle into the game a little bit more. And as we talked about earlier, so too did Arthur Smith. Once both of those guys settled into the game, they looked fine. There was no issues to me. So I think that if Russell Wilson is not 100% healthy, you go back to Justin Fields this week. If Russell is, I don't think Fields did quite enough to take it away from a perfectly healthy Russell Wilson.
I agree, but I don't think Russ is going to be healthy at all this season. I just don't. I have a hard time saying that a calf injury that has lingered this long, that was re-aggravated just before week 1, that we've seen other quarterbacks deal with for weeks and weeks and weeks or seasons, is going to be 100% at any point this season. And I agree with you. I look at Justin Fields and say, I don't think the Steelers offense pulls off what they pulled off yesterday if Justin Fields isn't able to run for a first down or avoid some pressure or, make a move when he should have made a move and just extended a play. And by no means was Justin Fields perfect. By no means was Justin Fields perfect. But he also didn't have a full week of practice. The last 2 days of practice when he was the starter, they were still working on a Russell Wilson playbook. The first full half of the season, or the first full half of the game, he was under center because this was a Russell Wilson playbook. And then you adapted on the fly at halftime to make this a somewhat Justin Fields playbook. And I would like to see what he could do with a full Justin Fields play. Don't think he's going to go out there and score 60 points. I don't think he's going to go out there and score 30 points. But I think he could get in the end zone. I think this could be a little bit better than what they have right now. And I'm very nervous that if you get a non-mobile quarterback in there, if you're sitting there with Russell Wilson, who isn't able to move around, who's trying to be a pocket passer, you're not going to be able to make as much happen because everybody besides George Pickens had 2 receptions for 8 yards, unless you were Pat Freiermuth, who had, I think, 3 for 27 or something like that. But you need more than that. You can't have a pocket passer without wide receivers. And if the Steelers don't have wide receivers, if the Steelers' offensive line is still in a spot where they're developing, and I think they played very well yesterday, but still developing, I just don't think a pocket passer is the answer here. Justin Fields allows you to just go out there and try to make something out of nothing. And he did that a couple of times. There were at least 2 third downs that were 4th downs with a pocket passer. Justin Fields gets first downs and some. And there were other moments like that as well where you just saw Justin, you saw him make something and you said, okay, they needed that. And it wasn't anything spectacular, but it was enough. And I feel that if Russ is not able to do that, which I don't believe he is, the Steelers can't turn to him and say, you're going to do this and you're going to win us football games. Let me ask you, do you think that the Steelers, because we could sit here and ramble all day long, it doesn't matter. Do you think that the Steelers do turn to Russell Wilson in week 2?
I think if he gets to a point where he can play, I think the Steelers will go there. Not that that's the right choice, but I think that's where the Steelers will go.
Yeah, I agree. But I do think that if I had to guess, the week goes one of two ways. And I think that the week starts off. That's why Tomlin said you could ask me Tuesday. He needed to buy some time. He was not ready for that situation whatsoever. And he knew it was coming. You know, these coaches are prepped before they got there. They know exactly. These PR staffs are phenomenal. They know what they're doing. Mike definitely went up there and said, I got to make a decision by Tuesday how to handle this. And I still don't think he gives us an answer on Tuesday. I think tomorrow rolls around and he says something along the lines of, we'll see who's healthy. If Russ is good to go, he'll be the guy, but we'll see how the week progresses. We will let practice availability be our guide. First one of the season, which shout out Mike Tomlin. We're back, baby. I think that Russ tries to practice is limited, and they know by the end of Wednesday whether or not Justin's going to be the guy, but they'll utilize this and say, Russ is hurt. We're not going to play him. That's the way that they go about it. By no means is Russ healthy and on the sideline. That's not going to happen. If Russ is able to play enough, the Steelers will play him, just like you said. If he is just under less than enough, the Steelers will drag this out and they will milk this injury for another week just to see if they could get more out of Justin Fields.
Yeah, and I think Black and Yellow Texas Steel tells us something here that we're all thinking. You got to let Russ get his back on Sean Payton. That also has to play a factor into this because the Steelers are that type of organization.
I agree.
Where they want to do what's best for their player and they know how much it means to Russ. Not that should play a factor. It shouldn't, but this is the Steelers we're talking about. It probably will.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I look at this, and if Russ is good, I still don't think, like, I'm not going to sit here and say Russ isn't the better option of the two. I think there's a chance he is. But from what we saw yesterday, the offense around them wasn't enough for me to say don't go with Justin. And I agree. I think that I would love to see Russ go out there. And I would love a situation where Russ could go out there in week 2, ball out, have a game. He's your starting quarterback. And the moment that you don't feel he is anymore, you go back to Justin. I would love that. But I agree. I think that if there's an opportunity, you give Russ an opportunity to get some revenge. And the Steelers would think that way. For sure, they would think that way. They already are thinking that way. But we'll see what happens. I think the Steelers know by Wednesday. If Russ is a limited participant on Thursday, Justin's your starting quarterback on Sunday. That's my thought on that one. All right. That's my rant on Justin, Arthur Smith, TJ Watt, George Pickens and company. We got a lot of questions, so I'm very excited to answer them. I know you guys got more. Toss them in the chat. We'll answer all of them before we head out of here. What do we got?
Let's start with Michael Schock, who says the offense outsnapped the defense 68-56. Last year, the offense only outsnapped the defense 3 times, keeping the D fresh and off the field, and they dominated. Do you think that is the secret to success for the Steelers this year?
100%. We talked about this in April, in May, in June, in July. The Steelers were building a football team to do 2 things, win on defense and on the ground. And guess what they did yesterday? They won through defense and on the ground and with the boot of their great kicker. And if that's how they got to win games, that's how they got to win games. It's probably not the formula for a Super Bowl, but it's the formula for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And quite frankly, they've done this before where they have gone on runs. They have made noise in the playoffs. They have won Super Bowls behind this formula, and it works. So I'm not going to knock it until somebody proves me otherwise. But in my head, yeah, the Steelers have the secret sauce and the just make sure your offense isn't going 3 and out. And that's where the praise for both Justin Fields and especially Arthur Smith comes in, is they kept themselves on the field. And that is immediately a massive upgrade.
Yeah, only 2 3 and outs all of yesterday. None in the first half.
Wild. How that goes, that is not it. People need to recognize how we lived a whole 2 seasons where the expectation was 3 and out, where the expectation was don't even take your helmet off if you're TJ Watt because you're going back out there. Here we are yesterday, just 2 3 and outs. That's insane.
Let's go over to William, who also asks, does yesterday's game make needing a true wide receiver a serious, immediate need sooner rather than later? Also, shout out to Chris Boswell.
Shout out to Chris Boswell. That's the MVP of the game. I'm there's everybody else will probably be flying back from Atlanta, and it'll probably be me and maybe 2-3 other guys in the locker room at 10:45. And I hope he's not going to be there. Boz is never in the locker room ever. And I've been here 6 years. I've never talked to that guy one time, but I would love to talk to him. It would be great. The wide receiver too, I do think it's serious. I think they'll test out Roman Wilson, but again, like that's not Mike Tomlin's job. Mike Tomlin's job is to coach the guys on the field, and that's what he'll focus on. Omar's job is to work the background and try to see if he can improve this team. And I think that's what he'll try to do, is he'll start making phone calls and seeing what he can do and seeing how it works and seeing who's available. And Mike will continue to try to coach these guys up, and we'll just see what happens. But I do think that it makes it a serious need for sure. The Steelers have to try to do something with the wide receiver too, simply because they don't even have a wide receiver. They don't even have a wide receiver 3. There was not wide receiver 3 action going on yesterday. It was like wide receiver 4, bottom of the depth chart. You're playing 6 snaps or something, catching 2 balls for 8 yards. That's what yesterday was.
Let's go to Marlon Lewis, who wants to know who gets the call due to Cameron Johnston's injury.
I don't know. That's a super tough question. Corliss Waitman is a name that comes to mind. He's a free agent. The Steelers liked him when he was in town. He's done some good things in the NFL. I'd have to see who's out there. I don't think Presley Harvin's going to come back to Pittsburgh, but I would imagine the Steelers do make some noise. It's tough to guess a punter because you could go with the big name punters that are still in the market, but chances are the Steelers are just going to try to work somebody and bring somebody in that they've worked with before. Corliss Waitman is a name that I would start watching.
Let's go over to Dalton, who wants to know, did you like what you saw out of Peyton Wilson and Dante Jackson? I think they both played well.
Yeah, Dante Jackson is an animal, absolute animal, and he is going to be a stud by the end of the season. I'm extending him today. Like, if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm saying, hey, Dante, you want 2 more years on that deal? Sounds good, pal. Here it is. Peyton Wilson's also going to be real good, and I was very impressed with his first game. To save a touchdown on that tackle, to have the reaction time and the closing speed to get there, and to make a sure hit on whoever it was, I think it was Bijan, that's a great play. And he played well the rest of the game. I thought both of them were impressive.
DJ Thomas says, after the first game, what do you think the Steelers need to round it out if you could pick one position?
The wide receiver. I mean, without question, it's wide receiver. You get another wide receiver and you at least have more options. I would imagine it does more for the quarterback situation. I would imagine it puts more points on the board, and I would imagine it makes life so much easier for Arthur Smith and company and opens up the running game. Like, you just don't have it. The reason George Pickens is catching unbelievable balls is because nobody else is open and you only have one guy to throw the football to. So we'll see what happens. I don't know if they're going to, but a wide receiver 2, a real one, probably changes the whole game for this offense.
Let's go to the next question. How did you feel about Beanie Bishop? First Monday after Monday Night Football, everybody's got to feel my name today.
Beanie Bishop, I thought played better than expected, but not great. If that's, I'm trying to make it a compliment without overhyping him. I think I don't know. I gotta know what that coverage was. I have to know whose assignment was which, but I think the Kyle Pitts touchdown was on him, but he made the first tackle of the game on special teams. He made a couple of sure tackles that were really big on defense. I thought he played decent, like better than expected, better than he played during the preseason. I thought it was a step forward. And it was a good launching pad for a guy that I was very nervous about coming into the year.
Yeah, I'd have to say, without seeing the All-22 film, it seemed like he could have got a little bit deeper in his zone to help on that touchdown. But again, we got to wait to see, how everything looked and what it looked like in front of him as well.
Yeah.
Let's go to Zai, who says, got to ask, what's the vibe with Scotty Miller's performance in week 1?
I mean, he held a kick, man, and sometimes I said it to myself sitting in this office with nobody else here that could hear me at all. And I said, versatility keeps you on the roster, and you hold a kick, you're going to make a roster. You're going to keep yourself here. So I don't know. I got to go back and really watch Scotty Miller and see how he did, but he did almost nothing on offense. Played a little bit of gunner, had a tackle. Like, I just think there were moments of, okay, this is a good special teams play, but I have to go back and really watch him. Offensively, did nothing.
Let's go over to Lifted Ones, who says, honestly, can we trade the Panthers a 4th-round pick to get
Yeah.
Deontay Johnson back? They should just tank the season.
Yeah. Yeah. After yesterday, I didn't. The Panthers game obviously was going on at the same time as the Steelers game, so I didn't watch it. But I saw the highlights, and yikes, big yikes. Just to talk gambling, because we do that a lot. I put an 8-leg parlay together or something. My buddy texted it to me on Thursday night and said, "Yo, if you put this in $10, it wins you like $14,000." I said, "All right, sounds good, pal." Everything hit except for Raheem Mostert touchdown and Deontay Johnson over 4.5 receptions. If Deontay's not having more than 4 receptions a game, you got to get him out of there because he's worth more than 4 receptions a game. I'd give him a 4th. The Steelers would not even consider it.
Mike wants to know, are we doomed to another season of red zone struggles? How do we find greater success getting into the end zone?
I think it's a bunch of things, but penalties is the big one. That was a drive killer yesterday. A number of times were bad penalties. On top of that, you just got to open the playbook up more, and I think that'll come. You know, you had the last minute quarterback decision, Arthur Smith's first game, shaking off some rust. You don't really have a true wide receiver 2, offensive line injuries. It's just all built up to okay, things ran fluid, but not fluid enough. I want to see week 2, and if a full week of Justin Fields, if that's the case, or a full week of Russell Wilson, if that's the case, works out better for how this offense operates.
Steven wants to know, after seeing the first game and knowing that Tomlin normally wins divisional games, does your outlook change of wins versus losses this season?
No, I had week 1 win over Atlanta. Nick down there did not, but I had a week 1 win over the Atlanta Falcons. So my record is still 11-7, I believe, as of the other day, and I'm keeping it the same.
Let's go over to Turk Hollinger, who says, morning, Noah and Nick. It's like our offense was nervous out there, but it looked a lot like the Canada offense. Am I wrong?
You're wrong. You're wrong. Yeah, you're wrong. And I get what, they looked nervous. They looked rattled at the beginning. But it's the adjustments. It's the third down execution. It's the blocking. It's the getting guys open. It's the lack of the same play over and over and over and over again. It was a totally different offense. It was a much more fluid offense, and it wasn't perfect by no means, but it was a massive step forward, and it showed the progress. I mean, Justin Fields went from under center to shotgun as soon as Arthur Smith realized that's going to be an issue. Let's change that up. It was a much better offense.
Let's go over to Steven's next question, which is, now that the Steelers have the only win in the division, is it something they can keep up with and win the AFC North?
Yeah, I'll tell you this. The Bengals look terrible, and we were high on the Bengals. The Bengals look terrible. The Browns look atrocious. I mean, the Browns that was bad. Like, we got to actually watch that game, and that was bad. Deshaun Watson looks terrible, and the Ravens offensive line makes me nervous for Lamar Jackson. And if you're only going to use Derrick Henry for half of a football game, 1, screw you, because he was my first pick in my fantasy draft, and 2, what are we doing? The success is not going to come. So, yeah, I think there's, the door is open. Certainly, you got to keep this momentum rolling, but it's way too early in the season to tell.
Let's go over to Luke Nessie, who says, do we give Fields first team reps this week, or do we go back to Russ for revenge against Denver?
I believe Wednesday will give us an indication. Russ will be limited. If he's full participant, the Steelers are going to rock with Russ. The only way that Justin starts in week 2 is if the Pittsburgh Steelers milk this injury for Russ and say Russ is not going to play again. That's the only way that they'll go about this. Just because it saves face. There's no public huge thing. You can't go, if Justin stinks in week 2, you can't go back to Russ at that point. You've already made the decision. Now this is just becoming a dramatic mess. So I would guess that Wednesday tells us if it's Russ or Justin, but we'll see.
Let's go over to EMAC, who says, through all the excitement of week 1, I didn't notice. Did Broderick Jones play left tackle?
No, played right tackle. Dan Moore played left tackle. Troy Fautanu didn't get in much. I don't know what the snap count was, but I didn't see him.
I'll look that up while you answer the next question, just to make sure we have that answer. Marlon says, do you think the offense didn't go all out because we knew they couldn't score on us? The only way they could win is if we turned it over, and that was Justin Fields' weakness before.
Yeah, I think that the Steelers obviously always have the plan of don't turn the ball over. This is not protect the ball, don't lose games. You saw that early, but I believe that goes into the last minute change of quarterback more so than Atlanta's game plan. I believe the Steelers were, we just had to change everything and see what happens. And because of that, you can't turn the ball over. You have to be protective of the football. You can't make dumb plays. And that was the game plan. The game plan was don't lose because we just made the biggest change you can make on game day, and we have to be cautious.
Let's go over to Quote, who says, also, is this a new version of Justin Fields that doesn't turn the ball over, or do you think this was more of an anomaly?
I don't know. Yet to be, to be determined, right? We'll see what happens moving forward. I thought Justin Fields looked under control a lot during training camp when it came to protecting the ball. It was more so how bad was the processing, or how slow was the processing, but it wasn't he's throwing interceptions. It was more so just he can't get the ball out fast enough. Maybe that changes. I don't know. To be determined.
Steven wants to know, how elite can Joey Porter Jr. be? Didn't see much of Drake London as a factor yesterday.
Yeah, I think Joey Porter Jr. is going to be a guy that week 5, week 6, people are like, Joey Porter Jr. is not doing anything. What are we doing? And we're going to have to explain to them, Joey Porter Jr. is not doing anything because you can't throw the football to Joey Porter Jr.'s side. It's just not going to ever happen. And that's where he's headed. So yesterday, I was nervous about a sophomore slump. Less nervous as of yesterday. He looked fantastic.
Broderick Wallace says, did Peyton Wilson play more snaps than he Landon Roberts? I repeatedly saw number 41 around the football yesterday.
He did. I don't know, to be honest. He did?
Peyton Wilson had 24 snaps on defense. Landon Roberts, 23.
There you go.
Let's go to Lifted Ones, who says, how out of reach is it that the Steelers get Deontay? We already answered this one. Sorry. Let's go to the next one. Black and Yellow Texas Steel says, in an imaginary world, would you be okay with the Steelers quarterback swapping in and out the entire season?
No. In Madden, yeah, I'd have a blast doing it. But in real life, you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have one. So, no, I don't think it works. You'd have to change the game plan every week. You don't get our connection with your wide receivers. So many things could happen, and I just don't think it would be the best case scenario. The best way to build an offense and to build momentum is to build it with one guy.
Let's go to Noah Duffy, and I actually have the answer to this one as well. Says, did you guys see if the Texans used John Mechie yesterday? He could be a guy we could look to trade for. John Mechie was inactive yesterday for the Houston Texans. So what do you think about that?
Healthy scratch.
He's inactive. I don't know about healthy scratch. I haven't found whether or not there was injuries.
Wow. If it was a healthy scratch, I'm calling today and saying, hey, what's up, pal? We want something. Again, I don't think John Mechie moves the needle for the Steelers, but he's got upside. And if you got Roman Wilson, John Mechie out there, you got more upside than what you got right now. So maybe it works. Furthest thing from a guarantee. But it's a boost in potential, and the Steelers could use a boost in potential. That's huge. I didn't realize that.
Let's go to Zach, who wants to know, how did you feel about Spencer Anderson filling in at left guard yesterday?
Phenomenal. Spencer Anderson did 2 things to me yesterday. One, made me think that Spencer Anderson is the next Ramon Foster, where he's going to come in here. He's going to be a late round to undrafted guy, and he's going to be a starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers for a long time. And I'm happy because Spencer Anderson's a great dude. He works hard, and he's very good. And 2, there's no need to talk about Mason McCormick anymore. Let the 4th string or the 4th round rookie develop into what you want him to become in a year from now, not what you want him to become today. And Spencer Anderson did good. I thought Spencer Anderson looked great yesterday. Better than James Daniels.
Ash Flash wants to know, when is Roman Wilson coming back? He was inactive in week 1.
I would say we find out on Thursday. If he's, I would imagine, limited on Wednesday, potentially full participant on Thursday. If he is a full participant on Thursday, he's going to play in week 2. If not, if he's limited Wednesday, Thursday, I don't think he plays week 2. That's where I stand currently. But it's a week to week thing.
We're going to answer 2 more before getting out of here. First, from Tom Hutton, punt returning. What did we think of Calvin Austin in the punt return? I say there was some improvement on a sketchy preseason.
I wasn't really worried about a sketchy preseason. Preseason, punt returns, cool, awesome, great, but you're also working with like the lowest of the low on the depth chart on special teams. So while Calvin Austin was back there, his gunners were guys who weren't going to make the roster. The line was guys who weren't going to make the roster. You had nobody's blocking in front of you. So nobody should ever take preseason special teams seriously. Like literally ever. Chris Boswell looked atrocious in training camp in the preseason. Put up 18 points by himself yesterday. So I wasn't worried about it. Calvin looked really good. He looked like a guy who took a step forward from last year in his punt return game, which was cool. You could tell he's shifty. You could tell the movement of everybody else is slowing down. And if he could continue to develop that, and the Steelers could get some quality gunners out there, because right now I just don't think they have the best ones. They could do something. I think that he could have a big year.
And let's finish it off with this one from Matt Hatch. Was TJ Watt offside?
He was not offsides. I mean, the ref even admitted it. The ref admitted it to TJ Watt during halftime and said, "Oh, I went back and realized I was wrong." Like, what are you doing? The refs were terrible yesterday. It was Flag City, man. Flag. I tried to come up with a tweet. I couldn't come up with a good one because it just sounded stupid. Flag Lana. That's what I wanted to put out there, but it was dumb. But they were terrible. He was not offsides. TJ Watt is a monster. I hope he wins Player of the Week even without. I mean, like his stats were awesome, but they could have been so much better. And I still think he deserves Player of the Week, week 1, because nobody looked as good as TJ Watt did yesterday.
They literally took away 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and one of them was a recovered fumble. It's ridiculous. And it's also bold by that referee mid-game to go up to TJ Watt and be like, that's on me. That's on me. TJ wants to rip your head off right now. I don't think he wants to hear you say, yeah, I got it wrong. You should have actually had that.
Yeah, 100%. Did you see the because on TV they show some of it, but you could see it like in the Twitter things where he's cursing out the ref on this. Like that is a scary human. That is a scary, scary human being. So shout out to that ref, man. But they were terrible yesterday.
That is a wrap for today's show then.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we are heading out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, find all of our stuff at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back tomorrow to recap Tomlin Tuesday and all of the news ahead with the Pittsburgh Steelers preparing for the Denver Broncos. As we say every day, enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.